10 Star Trek characters who were replaced, and by whom, whether due to casting troubles or story issues. Several Star Trek characters have been replaced throughout the franchise's long history. From the beginning, Gene Roddenberry's original concept for Star Trek went through several changes. Most of the characters from Star Trek's first pilot, The Cage, were replaced by the now iconic cast of Star Trek, the original series. In some cases, the replacement characters became even more popular than the originals, while at other times, the opposite was true. Characters are always coming and going within the Star Trek universe, but some have more obvious one-for-one replacements than others. Aside from the first cast shake-up, most of the later character changes had more to do with the actors playing them. Some actors decided they wanted to move on to other projects, which often meant their character had to be replaced. Still, most of these actors remain a part of the Star Trek family, even if their characters ultimately didn't last very long. Star Trek's original pilot, entitled The Cage, featured Captain Christopher Pike, Jeffrey Hunter, in command of the USS Enterprise, rather than Captain James T. Kirk, William Shatner. Executives at NBC at the time were not happy with this first pilot, feeling it was too strange and cerebral. Still, NBC had faith in Gene Roddenberry's vision, and the studio commissioned a second pilot. Jeffrey Hunter elected not to return as Captain Pike, although accounts differ as to why he left the production. Rather than casting a new Pike, Roddenberry created the entirely new character of Captain James T. Kirk and cast William Shatner in the role. Kirk was a more dynamic and action-oriented character, compared to Pike's more thoughtful approach to command. Leonard Nimoy's Spock was the only cast member from Star Trek's original pilot, The Cage, to stick around for the newer iteration. Jeffrey Hunter's Captain Pike was, of course, replaced by Shatner's Captain Kirk, but most of the other characters don't have one-to-one replacements. In The Cage, Majel Barrett's number 1 serves as Pike's first officer, but Science Officer Spock fills this role for Captain Kirk. Captain Pike's original chief medical officer, Dr. Philip Boyce, John Hoyt, was eventually replaced by Dr. Leonard McCoy DeForest Kelley, who became the third member of Star Trek's iconic trio. Majel Barrett still played a role in TOS as Nurse Chapel, as well as the voice of the Enterprise computer. Footage from The Cage was later used in Star Trek The Original Series Season 1, Episodes 11 and 12, The Menagerie, establishing Christopher Pike as the Enterprise's captain before Kirk. Based on Star Trek, The Next Generation's premiere, Denise Crosby's LT, Tasha Yar was set up to be one of the show's main cast members. As chief of security on the USS Enterprise D, she should have been at the center of the action. However, this only held true for a handful of early episodes, before Tasha was largely relegated to the background. Because of this, Denise Crosby decided to leave TNG near the end of the first season. After Armus unceremoniously killed Tasha Yar in Star Trek The Next Generation Season 1, Episode 23, Skin of Evil, Lt. Worf, Michael Dorn stepped up to fill the position of security chief. From that point forward, Worf would become one of TNG's most beloved characters, as the show explored his complex relationship with Klingon culture. After the end of TNG, Worf transferred to Star Trek Deep Space Nine, where he further came into his own as Star Trek's greatest Klingon. The Star Trek franchise has spanned over 5 decades, producing a vast universe filled with memorable characters. Given its long run and multiple series, there have been instances where beloved characters were replaced for various reasons, plot developments, actor availability, or even to serve the evolving needs of the story. Here's a look at 10 Star Trek characters who were replaced and who took over their roles or responsibilities. 1. Captain Pike, Jeffrey Hunter to Anson Mount. Captain Christopher Pike, the original captain of the USS Enterprise before James T. Kirk, has been portrayed by multiple actors over the years. In Star Trek, the original series pilot, The Cage, Pike was played by Jeffrey Hunter. However, Hunter declined to continue with the role, and Pike was later recast. Fast forward to Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Strange New Worlds, where Anson Mount brilliantly took over the role, presenting Pike as a charismatic and thoughtful leader. Mount's portrayal has garnered critical acclaim, bringing Pike into a new era of Star Trek storytelling. 2. James T. Kirk, William Shatner to Chris Pine. William Shatner originated the role of Captain James T. Kirk in Star Trek, the original series, defining the iconic, brash, and daring starship captain. However, when Star Trek was rebooted in 2009 by director J.J. Abrams. Chris Pine stepped into the role of a younger Kirk. Pine brought a fresh energy to the character, blending Shatner's swagger with a more modern sensibility. The rebooted timeline, known as the Kelvin timeline, allowed Pine's Kirk to be different yet still familiar, and he successfully made the character his own. 3. Spock. Leonard Nimoy to Zachary Quinto and Ethan Peck. Spock, the half-Vulcan, half-human science officer of the Enterprise, is perhaps one of the most iconic characters in science fiction history. Leonard Nimoy's portrayal in the original series and subsequent films solidified Spock as a cultural icon. When the franchise was rebooted, Zachary Quinto took on the challenging role of Spock in the 2009 Star Trek film. Quinto's performance was praised for its respectful homage to Nimoy's portrayal, even sharing screen time with Nimoy himself. Ethan Peck later portrayed Spock in Star Trek, Discovery, and Strange New Worlds, bringing a younger, more emotionally volatile version of Spock to life, while still maintaining the character's core traits. 4. Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy, DeForest Kelley to Carl Urban. DeForest Kelley's Dr. Leonard Bones McCoy was a central part of the original series trio, with his gruff demeanor and sardonic wit complementing Kirk and Spock. In the 2009 reboot, Carl Urban took on the role of McCoy, capturing the spirit of Kelley's performance. Urban's McCoy maintained the character's heart and humor, often serving as the moral compass of the group. His portrayal was widely praised for its loyalty to the original, while adding new depth to the character. 5. Yajia Dax. Terry Farrell to Nicole DeBoer as Ezri Dax. In Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Yajia Dax was a Trill symbiont who had lived multiple lifetimes and was portrayed by Terry Farrell for 6 seasons. After Farrell decided to leave the series, the character was killed off, and the Dax symbiont was transferred to a new host, Ezri Dax, played by Nicole DeBoer. Ezri, a more inexperienced and less confident character, was a stark contrast to Yajia, but over the final season, she grew into her role and provided an interesting look at the challenges of Trill life. 6. Zephram Cochrane. Glenn Corbett to James Cromwell. Zephram Cochrane, the inventor of warp drive in the Star Trek universe, was first portrayed by Glenn Corbett in the original series episode Metamorphosis. When Cochrane was revisited in Star Trek First Contact, James Cromwell took over the role. Cromwell's Cochrane was a more flawed, humanized version of the brilliant scientist, depicted as a reluctant hero who eventually rises to the occasion. His portrayal helped redefine Cochrane as a critical figure in Federation history. 7. Captain Philippa Georgiou. Michelle Yeoh to Mirror Universe Georgiou. In Star Trek Discovery, Captain Philippa Georgiou was originally portrayed as a noble and wise leader by Michelle Yeoh. However, her character was killed off early in the series. Yeoh later returned as an alternate version of Georgiou from the Mirror Universe, a ruthless and cunning version of the character. This Mirror Universe Georgiou, known for her manipulative ways, became a fan favorite and took on a significant role throughout the series, eventually leading to her own spin-off series. 8. Catherine Pulaski. Diana Muldaur replacing Gates McFadden as Dr. Crusher. In Star Trek The Next Generation, Gates McFadden's Dr. Beverly Crusher was a beloved part of the crew during the first season. However, McFadden left the show before Season 2 due to creative differences, and Diana Muldaur was brought in to play Dr. Catherine Pulaski. Pulaski was intended to bring a different dynamic to the medical officer role, but after a single season, McFadden returned to the series, and Crusher resumed her duties aboard the Enterprise 9. Tuvok. Tim Russ to alternate versions. In Star Trek Voyager, Tim Russ portrayed Tuvok, the logical Vulcan tactical officer. Over the course of the series, Tuvok's role was not replaced.